General.
In the winter of 1516, on the northwestern frontier of the Ming Empire, the army of the Eastern Chagatai Khanate advanced in overwhelming numbers. Their leader Mansur aimed to invade the Central Plains. Jiayuguan was facing a life-or-death test.
By the general's order, those who surrender their arms will be spared.
Jiayuguan's defenses were impregnable. But could the garrison truly hold? Everyone knew Mansur would not give up easily. At that time in Suzhou, a general named Rui Ning was packing and about to leave. Not long ago, he received an imperial decree transferring him from the post of Mobile Corps Commander of the West Route to the Shanxi Auxiliary Regional Military Commission. His aspiration to defend the frontier was thwarted, leaving him frustrated. But now, something unexpected occurred.
General! General! General.
A battle report arrived as expected. A large number of Mongol cavalry were surging toward Suzhou from the direction of Jiayuguan. Mansur was no stranger to Rui Ning. Over the years, this name had repeatedly appeared in battle reports. Suzhou's defenses could not compare to Jiayuguan's, and reinforcements from the Central Plains were delayed. The city's garrison alone wouldn't withstand the fierce Mongol cavalry. In this winter of 1516, the standoff between the Ming Empire and Mongol forces lasted from dawn to dusk. Since the Song and Yuan dynasties, the invention and application of gunpowder had given rise to various cannons and firearms. The use of firearms made wars even more brutal. Jiayuguan's garrison stood ready, prepared to counter Mansur's attack. Mansur could see it, too, and he refrained from reckless action. Now, his cavalry had already passed through a vulnerability in Jiayuguan's defenses. Tianxing Bridge, bypassing Jiayuguan and heading straight for Suzhou. Mansur was confident. Since Jiayuguan was impregnable, there was no need to force an attack. Capturing Suzhou would lead to Jiayuguan's fall.
In general, the mid-Ming dynasty was on the defensive, which means they dealt with problems as they arose, regarding whether to fight or not. At any time, when war loomed, there were always two voices. Some advocated fighting, others opposed it, and the latter usually prevailed. Several times when Mansur marched close, he was then appeased with benefits, and he withdrew. But this time, he gained nothing of what he'd hoped for, or what he'd expected to gain more and better. So he looped around Jiayuguan and marched for Suzhou.
As for Rui Ning, he was now merely a dismissed general. Leaving Suzhou with his wife was his best choice. But would he really step away?
Dinner's ready. No market crowd today. It's just simple fare.
I'll have it later.
Rui Ning often dreamed that when border wars grew still, he'd lay down his sword, return to the fields and stay by his steadfast wife's side. After all, he was just human. No one could blame him for returning to Shanxi. But his ideals and honors were already bound to Suzhou and Jiayuguan. To make matters worse, spies who had been hiding in Suzhou started a rebellion. Chen Jiuqiu, Vice Defense Commissioner of Suzhou, ordered the city to activate combat readiness and suppress the rebels with full force.
This time, Chen Jiuqiu captured many who had contact with Mansur and Turpan. Some were, of course, wrongly accused, as there was trade contact, but time allowed no scrutiny to distinguish them. Anyway, it did help in stopping Mansur from taking Ganzhou and Suzhou. It served as a buffer, but the rigorous defenses worked primarily.
Rui Ning stayed up all night, racking his brains, but failing to devise a good strategy. Time ticked away. Mansur's army was getting closer. As a soldier, defending his country was his unshirkable responsibility. Even if he died for it, he would not let Mansur advance further. This was his duty. At dawn, Rui Ning volunteered to lead the charge. He rallied his old troops, fully armed, ready to march out. Everyone knew. It was almost a one-way path to death. Nearly suicidal. But still, not a single soldier faltered. They stood in formation. With high morale.
No! The enemy outnumbers us. Fight or surrender.
Fight!
No return is likely. Fight or retreat.
Fight!
"800 warriors swore with blood. To fight to the death. To stop Mansur's cavalry. Now, with their own lives cast aside, defending the country and protecting the people was their sole conviction.
Death before surrender.
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 Drink up.
Death before surrender. 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 Death before surrender.
At Shaziba between Jiayuguan and Suzhou, Rui Ning's forces clashed head-on with Mansur's army, and a bloody battle ensued. Rui Ning's troops were at peak morale, and no one flinched. The Mongol forces were forced to divide, and fought in a panic. Inside Suzhou, Chen Jiuqiu used the time bought by Rui Ning, and quickly quelled the rebellion. He then focused on Mansur's approaching forces. Under Chen Jiuqiu's leadership, Suzhou's garrison fought relentlessly, repelling waves of the enemy's assaults. news quickly reached Jiayuguan and shocked Mansur. Never had he thought his mighty troops couldn't even take a mere frontier town like Suzhou. Still harder to believe that Rui Ning, an obscure general, could cause such damage to the elite forces he was proud of. It was a brutal battle. Out of supplies, Rui Ning and his men bled white, yet still held their ground. Suzhou's defenders also went all out, yielding not an inch to the Mongol tide. However, the outnumbered forces of Rui Ning couldn't survive the battle. All 800 men died fighting. Soon after, reinforcements finally arrived. Seeing the tide had turned, Mansur had no choice but to retreat.
It was an extremely brutal battle. Though orders came to redeploy, this soldier was still at his post, so he had the duty to defend his land. As long as he was a patriotic and responsible general, he would inevitably face this battle and commit himself to it, even at the cost of his life. He was a remarkable man. Of course, the failure at this battle would haunt the Ming dynasty, as such a loyal general in the northwest died in battle. Seeing Mansur rising, the Ming would be greatly affected.
Upon learning of Rui Ning's death in battle, Qin Jiuqiu was grief-stricken. He reported his heroic sacrifice to the court, which honored him posthumously as vice commissioner-in-chief, with a hereditary post of commander, and granted him a memorial hall and a posthumous title, Xiangmin. They also ordered Shi Yao, the Grand Secretary, to compose a monument inscription to honor Rui Ning's patriotism and righteousness. In the inscription of the Xiangmin Shrine, Shi Yao praised Rui Ning as upright, incorruptible and dignified. While Qin Jiuqiu also deserved commendation, he got caught in court politics and was imprisoned. He was reinstated in the third year of the Jiajing reign and promoted to assistant censor-in-chief and grand coordinator of Gansu. he began recruiting and training elite troops to prepare for Mansur's potential return.
Both Chen Jiuqiu and Rui Ning advocated fighting. After Rui Ning died in battle, actually it was Chen Jiuqiu who pushed for Rui Ning's recognition. And the pro-peace faction thought differently. What role did they play? They claimed that he was reckless. He let out 800 soldiers, but none returned. Where was the merit in that? So the court delayed his merit recognition. For over 2 years, he was ignored by the court. Rui Ning's wife finally could bear it no longer and directly petitioned the court, stating her husband had died for the country, and such a man, loyal to the emperor and his duties, should not have died unrecognized. It was her petition that eventually made the difference. And things like the establishment of his shrine and his posthumous promotions were then arranged.
As expected, Jiayuguan soon faced another life-or-death test. In 1523, Mansur led over 20,000 elite cavalry and came well prepared, besieging Jiayuguan and Suzhou at the same time. Chen Jiuqiu quickly mobilized forces, rushing to Jiayuguan overnight. Their tactics and firepower proved superior, and Mansur's cavalry soon fell into disarray. The Khan narrowly escaped death amid intense artillery fire and retreated in defeat. It was the most crushing victory against nomadic cavalry in the Middle and Late Ming dynasty. After the battle, Emperor Jiajing promoted Chen Jiuqiu to vice-censor-in-chief.
As a soldier, Chen Jiuqiu was bold enough, facing formidable enemies. Courage to fight defines all. No fight means no way out. No fight, no future. At that time, in the Northwest, as a vice-censor-in-chief, he was the highest-ranking military commander in the area. One bold enough to confront the enemy.
Three years later, Emperor Jiajing, named Zhu Hozong, received a report from the war hero Chen Jiuqiu. He suggested that Turpan repeatedly invaded the borders because they turned the empire's tributary system into spy highways, breeding traitors at the gates. Therefore, they should emulate Emperor Guangwu severing trade with the western regions to secure the northwestern frontier's peace. Although, securing the Heshi corridor remained the Central Dynasty's unchanging fundamental policy. After the decline of the Tang Empire, the Central Dynasty's capitals gradually shifted eastward. The Heshi corridor and regions further west became increasingly remote and increasingly difficult to control. The Ming Empire's actual control over the 7 garrisons west of Jiayuguan was very weak. Hami was constantly contested by Turpan and the Oirats, lost and regained repeatedly in a prolonged tug-of-war. The rulers of the Ming Empire had long lost interest in territories beyond Jiayuguan. As an agrarian empire, the Ming's economy was self-sufficient. With the Great Wall as a bulwark, foreign trade held no great significance. As early as during the Hongzhi reign, when severe crises erupted on the northwestern frontier, debates about closing the pass arose in the court. Emperor Xiaozong expelled all Turpan envoys from the capital and dispatched officials to Gansu, per court decree, rejecting their tribute, detaining 172 envoys at the border, closing the Jiayuguan Pass, and severing tribute routes for good. Though not long after, the embargo eased to some extent. Debates on whether to close the pass never ceased. For decades, ministers argued endlessly, and its gates swung open and shut several times. Eventually, in 1539, Zhu Hozong decided to abandon all loose-rein garrisons west of the Heshi corridor and close the Jiayuguan Pass for good. This was the policy of extreme contraction that had far-reaching influence, closing the pass and ending tribute. From then on, Jiayuguan was thrust into the eye of the storm, truly becoming the last bastion, defending the Ming Empire's western frontier, and the front line facing enemies from the northwest.
The Ming abandoned the 7 garrisons because its strength fell short. The Ming dynasty did not have spare forces to station such strong troops on the frontier. Too many crises loomed. Eastern Mongols raiding, coastal pirates surging, domestic rebellions rising, especially Zhengde-era uprisings. So the northwest was left to its fate. It was forced to give up the 7 garrisons. This move, in fact, dealt a severe blow to the Ming's northwestern defense. Jiayuguan was now exposed to the northwestern region. With forward strategic outposts like Hami lost, a proactive stance was switched to a passive and defensive stance. The tribute system was trade, in essence, an exchange of goods. For the Ming dynasty, it was not worthwhile. The Ming gained nominal suzerainty, but lost vast amounts of wealth.
In the same year the pass closing order was issued. Zhu Hozong appointed Jialuan, the Minister of War, as the right censor-in-chief, to inspect the 9 frontier garrisons. When he reached Suzhou, he thoroughly inspected Jiayuguan and concluded that Jiayuguan was the foremost bulwark of Heshi's defenses. He submitted a memorial to the court on building the Western Great Wall, starting from the foot of Wenshu Mountain, stretching north to link Jiayuguan's southwest beacon. Then from the northeast beacon, running northwestward to the eastern opening of Shiguan Pass, spanning 10 kilometers in total, as a more comprehensive defense system. His memorial was immediately approved by Zhu Hozong. In the spring of 1540, a massive construction project began on the Gobi Desert, outside Jiayuguan. By the summer of the following year, Jiayuguan's fortifications were completed. The fortress featured inner walls, outer walls, and moats, 3 layers of defenses in total. The layout was improved. It connected seamlessly to the Great Wall, north and south. It maximized terrain advantages, including Taolai Gorge and Jiayu Mountain. Inside the fortress, military facilities were upgraded. Now, inside the Jiayuguan Pass, a complete defense system with a beacon every 2.5 kilometers, a watchtower every 5 kilometers, a fort every 15 kilometers, and a fortress every 50 kilometers was established. In this narrow region of northwest China, such dense national defense works, established over generations in 168 years, were truly extraordinary.
No defense system is ever complete. No defense system cannot be breached or bypassed.
Military facilities are continuously improved. People draw from historical experience and decide how to build next time. Such facilities constantly evolve. Based on military needs, defense facilities are continuously improved.
With wars, people kept learning lessons on how to perfect the defense system. During the Jiajing reign, Jiayuguan was reinforced with double-layered walls, then connected east-west by extended border ramparts. This formed a complete defense line, preventing direct invasion. Anyway, it played a crucial role in enclosing the territory.
When this military fortress, later hailed as the greatest pass under heaven, was finally completed, the Ming Empire was halfway through its life. In 1566, the 45-year-long Jiajing reign came to an end. His son Zhu Zaiho ascended the throne, starting the reign named Longqing. Though his reign lasted only 6 years, it brought China precious peace and stability. He adjusted policies toward the Mongols drastically, achieving the Longqing peace agreement. In the Ming's north, the tense armed standoff eased subsequently. With conflicts dissolved, border passes reopened, becoming markets for mutual exchanges. But now, the Ming's exchanges with the western regions were far less convenient than before.
The pass closing had hurt both sides. It might appear only the Ming suffered, but actually the Mongol tribes were also badly hurt. How far did the blockade go? They couldn't even get enough food. What little they could plunder could not satisfy all their needs. Perhaps only the nobles had enough, didn't they? But the general population remained deprived. Thus, both sides came to realize that warfare and mutual blockades made no winners. Only by stopping fighting and reopening gates for peaceful exchanges could both parties benefit. Under these circumstances, both sides genuinely sought to avoid war. All else became negotiable.
Originally titled Mongolian Landscape Map, it was kept in the Ming Imperial Court. It marks 211 Ming-era place names, charting the route from the Ming frontier to Mecca. Covering today's China, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Tunisia, and Turkey. It spans over 10 countries and regions, in Europe, Asia, and Africa. It can be called a medieval world map. The starting point is China's Jiayuguan. Through careful examination of Jiayuguan's buildings depicted, its creation date is traced to between 1524 and 1539. It was right before the completion of Jiayuguan's defense system. This map is now titled the Silk Road Landscape Map. It reflects the epilogue of the Silk Road's glory. After the nomadic tribes of Hami and other garrisons west of Jiayuguan gradually migrated eastward, Jiayuguan's military defenses became even tighter, with strict rules on pass opening. Westerners' overland exploration eastward had almost stopped, due to the fall of the Mongol Empire and the rise of Islamic states in Central Asia. Europeans' impressions of China remained frozen in distant memories of the Silk Road. One question long puzzled them. Where was Cathay, the Oriental Empire described by Marco Polo, and stunned Europeans? In the late autumn of 1605, a large caravan of hundreds was approaching Jiayuguan. Laden with goods, they claimed to be envoys paying tribute to Beijing. With chest hair, fake beards, and traditional robes, Portuguese missionary Bento de Gois had disguised as an Armenian merchant Abdullah Isai for 3 years. He departed from India, traveled with caravans through today's Pakistan and Afghanistan, crossed the Pamir Plateau, and went eastward. Treacherous paths, harsh climate, and rampant banditry could not stop him. He sought to verify if the Cathay in Marco Polo's book was indeed China, and to find an overland route for missionary work in China. After 3 years of arduous journey, when Bento de Gois finally saw the towering pass beneath the Chilean mountains, he was deeply convinced that the land before him must be Cathay, the paradise, with gold and cream everywhere. Eager to explore further this vast and unknown land, he didn't anticipate this pass would trap him there. After closing the pass, the Ming dynasty strictly prohibited individual merchants from entering for tribute, except for minimal tribute trade, with stringent limits on foreign envoys' visit frequency and delegation size. At that time, the route from Hami to Jiayuguan was the only legitimate path to China for envoys of the western regions. Jiayuguan was their sole entrance into the Ming's territory. Under the Ming's tribute system, Jiayuguan was responsible for verifying credentials of missions from the western regions, guiding and receiving them, and escorting or retaining them. To distinguish official missions from private merchants, the Ming issued states of the western region's entry certification documents. Upon reaching Jiayuguan, a delegation would undergo border inspections. If its size and timing matched the document it held, it would be registered and permitted entry. If not, entry would be denied. Even one missing member would turn the entire delegation rejected. Some envoys recorded that upon reaching the pass, many Chinese officers came to count their members and register their names and positions. After a thorough inspection by officers of Jiayuguan, the barricades were finally removed. The entire entry procedure took Bento de Goys a total of 25 days.
The Ming had rules for receiving foreign envoys. First, verify their credentials. They needed to have official documents recognized by the Ming government, which were called canha, or other official documents bearing official seals. Historical records were also checked to see if this envoy had visited before, if this state had sent envoys before, and if they were friendly to the Ming or not. Everything needed to be checked. Documents in various languages were translated into Chinese. Also at this place, the Ming established post stations at passes on its borders, including Jiayuguan. Such stations were there to receive envoys, both those from inland and those from foreign states. They were monitored and provided with food and transportation as a strategic stronghold in the northwest and a critical pass in the Hashi corridor. Jiayuguan bore great responsibilities.
However, as required by the Ming dynasty, only 1/10 of a trade mission could proceed to the capital. The disease-stricken and impoverished Bento de Goys fell in Suzhou, just 38 years before the fall of the Ming Empire. Though the West remained fascinated by the mysterious East, the Silk Road still declined inevitably.
On the vast Gobi Desert, this majestic fortress looked especially imposing. Without Jiayuguan, the Hashi corridor would be in turmoil. If the entire corridor was given up, the Guangzhou region would be in turmoil. If the entire Shanxi and Gansu regions were in turmoil, the Ming Empire would be, too.
Established for 168 years, it remained the Ming's key military facility and stronghold in the northwest. Besides its role in defense, it served as a command center, a garrison base, and a strategic fortress. As long as Jiayuguan held, even if other regions were lost, they could be regained. But if Jiayuguan fell, those regions would likely fall as well. That's what made Jiayuguan important.
The smoke of battle cleared, and no more beacon fires blazed. The Ming Empire had long lost its vigor. Meanwhile, at Eurasia's western edge, a vibrant Europe was going through the Renaissance, Reformation, the astronomical revolution, and the Age of Discovery. These movements were transforming the entire world. This trans-Eurasian trade route fell into irreversible silence. Jiayuguan rose with the Ming's rise and fell with its fall. It stood quietly at the western end of the Heshi corridor. Majestic, desolate, impassively witnessing a dynasty's rise and fall. From 1372 to 1540, through 168 years and generations of hard work, Jiayuguan etched its fate as a solemn epic in the depth of history. Under the Gobi's endless night, the fortress slumbered deep, waiting for the winds of change. History keeps its vigil. Centuries later, explorers' boots would again tread this enigmatic eastern land.